The numbers are staggering, a 94% crash in U.S. aluminum exports. This isn't a typical market downturn, it's an economic disaster triggered by aggressive protectionism. Years of warnings about trade wars have come true, with the aluminum sector gutted by policies that favored confrontation over cooperation. Tariffs, meant to protect, have instead shattered supply chains and left factories silent. The collapse is a symptom of a deeper economic malaise, a self-inflicted wound from misunderstanding global trade. American producers, once thriving in a stable, rules-based system, are now locked out of global markets. The promise to protect jobs has backfired, leaving workers facing layoffs and uncertainty. The 94% figure isn't just a statistic, it's a tombstone for an industry sacrificed to failed economic ideology. The fallout extends beyond factories, damaging communities and America's reputation as a trading partner. This is the tragic result when political rhetoric collides with economic reality. The empty order books of the U.S. aluminum sector are a stark warning about the dangers of economic nationalism. The heart of the aluminum collapse lies in the fractured U.S.-Canada trade relationship. For decades, their industries were deeply intertwined, with over 90% of Canada's metal exports heading south. But in June 2025, the U.S. doubled tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, turning a seamless partnership into an economic battleground. Canadian producers lost their main market overnight, and retaliatory tariffs followed, grinding North American commerce to a halt. Bilateral trade plummeted, with Canadian exports to the U.S. falling sharply. American producers, once reliant on Canadian buyers, suddenly found their largest customer gone. The result: factory shutdowns, job losses, and a fractured North American trade bloc. Canada's pivot to reduce reliance on U.S. trade signals a fundamental realignment. The aluminum trade, once a symbol of partnership, now marks its destruction. The loss of the Canadian market has been a body blow to U.S. industry. The path back to normalcy is long and uncertain. This is a classic case of trade policy backfiring. The damage is deep, and the consequences may be permanent. The tariff war quickly went global, alienating allies and adversaries alike. Tariffs on Indian goods, Swiss exports, and the European Union triggered a worldwide cycle of retaliation. The U.S. imposed steep tariffs on partners, poisoning relations and pushing them to seek new alliances. Even new trade deals like the one with Japan institutionalized protectionism instead of free trade. The U.S. transformed from a champion of open trade to its chief antagonist. Other nations responded in kind. China slapped massive tariffs on U.S. optical fiber, targeting key American industries. The result: American exporters are isolated, and global trust in the U.S. has eroded. These actions have inflicted billions in losses and driven partners to look elsewhere. The global tariff escalation hasn't made America stronger, it's made it poorer and more isolated. The world is moving on, forging new trade ties without the U.S. The cost of this strategy is clear: diminished influence and lost opportunity. The blowback from tariffs has been swift and severe, fueling a contraction in the U.S. economy. The trade deficit has ballooned, contradicting promises that tariffs would close the gap. Manufacturing has shrunk for 6 straight months, with companies blaming tariffs for rising costs and falling sales. Iconic brands like Campbell's Soup are forecasting weak results, citing tariff pressures. Retaliatory tariffs from China and Canada have targeted vulnerable U.S. sectors, deepening the pain. American exporters now face shrinking markets and rising input costs. The cycle of escalation leaves fewer places for U.S. goods abroad. Tariffs have acted as a tax on both consumers and producers, raising prices and eroding competitiveness. The contraction in manufacturing and gloomy forecasts are direct results of this trade war. The blowback is not just external, it's a domestic crisis, playing out in factories and boardrooms nationwide. The policy meant to revive industry has instead triggered layoffs and uncertainty. In a global economy, punishing partners means punishing yourself. The evidence is everywhere. Tariffs have hurt America more than they've helped. The trade war has sparked a constitutional showdown over who controls U.S. trade policy. The administration invoked emergency powers to impose sweeping tariffs, but a federal court has ruled most of them illegal. The case is now headed to the Supreme Court, with the administration warning of chaos if the tariffs are struck down. If the court rules against the tariffs, the government could owe hundreds of billions in refunds to importers, leaving consumers uncompensated. This legal battle is about more than economics, it's a test of the separation of powers. Can the executive branch unilaterally wage a trade war by declaring a national emergency? Congress has long delegated trade authority, but these actions may have pushed that delegation too far. The Supreme Court's decision could reshape the balance of power over trade for generations. The stakes are enormous, both legally and financially. The uncertainty prolongs economic pain and undermines confidence. The outcome will define the limits of presidential power in trade. The administration's next move, scrapping the de minimis exemption for small-value imports. As of September 2025, goods under $800 now face tariffs, ending a key pillar of the e-commerce boom. The result? Chaos at customs, shipment delays, and order cancellations from around the world. Small businesses and consumers are hit hardest, facing higher costs and fewer choices. The policy punishes entrepreneurship and undermines the very businesses it claims to protect. Ending de minimis is a blunt instrument, inflicting collateral damage on logistics, retailers, and consumers. It signals a shift from open commerce to bureaucratic friction and managed trade. The move is more than technical. It's a philosophical statement against global integration. The US is turning inward, making trade harder for everyone. The result? A less dynamic, less competitive economy. Consumers and small businesses pay the price for this regressive vision. The era of free-flowing e-commerce is over. The trade war's economic damage is matched by its geopolitical fallout. By treating allies as adversaries, the US has accelerated a shift away from its global leadership. Nations are forging new alliances. China, Russia, and India are building a multipolar world. New trade routes, like China's overland Silk Road, are designed to bypass US control. America is no longer the indispensable hub. It's becoming an obstacle to be avoided. Allies like Canada and India are diversifying away from the US, seeking stability elsewhere. This is a global trend, de-risking from American volatility. Ironically, America First policies have diminished US influence and opened doors for competitors. The trade war hasn't restored American greatness, it's hastened its retreat from global leadership. Institutions and relationships that once amplified US power are eroding. The 94% collapse in aluminum exports is a symbol of this retreat. The world is moving on, and America is being left behind. The price of turning inward is steep and growing.